Fire Radio.
Hey everyone, Jeremy, National Fire Radio. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, a very special guest, a brother that I just met last weekend down in Little Rock, Arkansas at the First In Conference. I had never crossed paths with Eric Budd before, but I sat through his class. He introduced himself. First off, you introduced yourself to me and I blew you off. What an asshole, right? Then I sit through your class and I'm like, or before you went up to speak, I kind of came up to you and put my tail between my legs and apologized, right?
Yeah.
Bro, it's so hard to, you caught me first thing, said hello, introduced yourself, and I'm like, hey man, nice to meet you, this and that, and I kind of moved on. And then I realized, like, no, man, like, this is a guy that, like, we got to double down on, you know? And I try to engage everybody, and I shake everybody's hand, and I smile at people. But sometimes, man, I just don't do it right. And I came up to you later in the day, and I was like, bro, I got to apologize. First off, I didn't even realize, like, who you were, what you are, where you've been, what you do. And I was like, I'm sorry, man. Like, I didn't even have coffee yet that morning and so on. So I truly apologize for that. What an idiot I am. But sometimes it happens, man. So I appreciate you.
Absolutely. All good. It was a pleasure meeting you, man.
Yeah, so it was a nice weekend, nice week down in Little Rock. You know, had the opportunity to speak down there, and you did as well. And I had never heard your program before. And as you started going, bro, I just sat back and just enjoyed every bit of it. And I kind of want to go down that road a little bit with you today and talk about the important things that are important to you. You got 22 years in the fire service, 10 with Washington, D.C. You have the coveted seat in the rescue company. You are the chauffeur on your tour, which is a very long and hard process to get to that position. I want to talk about that. Outside of that, you volunteer fireman as well for many, many years, which I know you said in your presentation and also before we started recording today that that's a real big part of your story in your beginning of your love for the fire service, and it got you to where you are today. Man, and not only that, but you are an all-in Maryland guy. Freaking Old Bay tattoos, crabs on your arm, the Maryland flag. Like, you guys from birth, I think, are tattooed with the Maryland flag on you, no?
It would have seemed that way, wouldn't it?
I'm telling you, I'm dead serious. We're sitting there at dinner that night, and I'm looking over at you, and your sleeves got can of Old Bay on it. I'm like, this is as you wonder where stereotypes come from, man.
Yeah, you got it.
Man, I love it. But listen, I truly enjoyed our time together, and I'm looking forward to today's conversation. So I want to hop right into it. I wrote down some notes before I started. I kind of wrapped my brain around where I want the conversation to go. And today, I wrote down, first and foremost, will not compromise.
Yeah.
Why did I write that about you?
So, first off, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it, the opportunity to just kind of talk shop a little more with you.
Of course, man.
The conversation, part of my lecture delivery in Little Rock and just some things I've been working through, basically just embracing that, like, we have a standard that we're going to maintain, and we're going to work hard for that. And you can choose to rise to that standard, or you could essentially just no two ways about it. You can find a different place if this doesn't fit for you. So that's where that all came from in a part of our discussion. So.
You know, but I want to dive down that hole a little bit, because I think what's really interesting is where you are today in your career in Washington, D.C., and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know Washington, D.C. as well as I do my area, of course. But the rescue companies are, like many major urban cities, the rescue companies are in the middle of all of it, right? So fires, rescues, emergencies, everything, and you got to be ready and prepped for everything. To get on that company is one thing, but to have that chauffeur seat's another. And I was super impressed with the process that goes into it. And when you started breaking down, and I want to talk about all this, and when you started breaking down what goes into gaining access to apply for that position, let alone be awarded that spot after all your hard time and training that goes into it. It's incredibly rewarding, but you can't compromise.
Right. Yeah. The District of Columbia has 3 different rescue companies, rescue squads, we call them. Rescue 1 is downtown, Rescue 2 is up in Petworth and Northwest, and then Rescue 3 is in Southeast. Each of the 3 rescue companies will be alerted on box alarms. They take care of a bunch of different specialty type rescues. And then we are the collapse and trench rescue for the city. So anything that involves a rescue or a collapse, a trench collapse, we would be first in on that one. The process to get on the rescue squad is in and of itself a little bit of a challenge, because you're required to you have basically 90 days to complete a series of skills, and then you're tested on them, and then if you pass those, you're able to get into the company and be assigned as a member. We talked in length about the process for the technician's exam. That starts with the knowledge of the box line test, where you have to know all the running routes from the firehouse to specific pull boxes, the short streets, the apartment complexes, to be able to give the addresses, stick maps to show what you're going, because we don't use a map book or the computer necessarily as an aid all the time. So it's expected for a technician to be able to navigate through the city. Once you complete that, then you have to do a department's test, which is like rules of the road, IFSTA manuals, all the different SOGs and operational things that would possibly, that would affect you as the driver operator, the technician. And then over the road pre-trip inspection and an over the road driving test, and then a separate day for skills stations, where you're placed in a position where you have to perform specific skills and lead your crew to make sure that you're proficient in being able to handle whatever they throw at you. So it's a very challenging day, but definitely rewarding. It's been a blessing, having the best time of my career. Absolutely. Hands down, just loving every minute of going to work.
To get on, I mean, to get to the rescue squad where you are today is one thing, but to gain that seat, right, the coveted chauffeur seat, the amount of time, I mean, just to put it in perspective, what you said the study period on that before you tested for that position was how long?
There's no hard and fast rule, but you have, I think we had like a 500 and some boxes, 330 short streets. You have to memorize them all.
Wild.
Because they're only going to pick 10 of each for the written test. So you got to know everything, but it just helps you become sharper. So I personally had a little over a year into studying for everything, and that's, there was a lot of sacrifice at home. God bless my wife for every night after dinner sitting down and every night after dinner it was a thing, right? I would sit down and just go through the binder and start studying, and she would kind of hang off to the side. I told a story about her. It was probably a week before the exam, and I did the same thing. We ate dinner, and I'm sitting down at the table afterwards with this big binder. It's probably 4 or 5 inches thick, going through stuff, and she just comes over, and she'd always just kind of let me do my thing, and she's like, "Hey, how you feeling?" I'm like, "I'm doing all right." And she's like, "You want me to help? Is there anything I can do to help?" I'm like, "Sure, the whole binder's yours. You can pick anything. It's all fair game, because it's all fair game for the test."
Right.
So for like probably a good 5-6 minutes, I'm like firing on all cylinders. I'm getting everything, left on 14th Street, left on V Street, right on King Avenue, into whatever, just rocking and rolling. And she's like, "Hold on for a second." And she has a 13-year-old son's getting ready to be 14 in December. And he's in there video gaming, and she's like, "You need to come see this." So he comes out and sits at the table with us, and she's like, "Anything in the book, pick it and ask him a question, he'll have it." And he's like, "There's no way." So, it was really cool experience on both sides of the coin, because for him, he got to see something different that he had never seen or understood. But for me, like, he got to understand delayed gratification and what happens when you just put work in without an immediate result. Without an immediate reward, I should say.
An incredible way to share that with him and your wife.
Absolutely.
And to see where all your hard work goes into, you set your mind to it, as cliche as that is.
Yeah.
It's very true. And what I love about this, I mean, this is just knowing the city. But then break it down to all the other disciplines you have to learn too. But the whole thing that I love is that when we don't go off map books or GPS or our phones, that means you're dialed into the neighborhoods, and if you're going to know where the 7200 block is on Main Street, you're going to know what that also looks like then too.
Yeah.
You're going to know the details, right? Because the details matter in this job.
Absolutely. And that was basically like the main part of my presentation in the end, was that the little details separate an average fireman or an average company from an excellent, what you would consider a great fireman or a great company. Like if you look at across in your specific jurisdiction, or the coveted ones across the country, they all have the same thing in common. They all are detail oriented, and they're all motivated and disciplined. And that's another thing that we talked about a little bit that I want to bring more into the conversation is like, what happens when motivation runs out? You have to have a system in place that keeps you on track and keeps you going. I was able to really, for the first time in my life, I'll be 41 in November. For the first time in my life, that process taught me true discipline in that, like, I don't feel like studying, but I have to, because I started in a volunteer firehouse where there were like 50 members and a couple paid guys that were riding the ambulance. They were cross-trained to be firefighters. Next thing you know, I get hired by a small fire department, a combination department doing the same thing. I've taken all these classes, and I'm like, I'm never going to get to use these here. The opportunity for going to the District of Columbia comes available. I was fortunate enough to get hired in an accelerated recruit class. Everybody in my class kind of had the same mentality. Everybody in my class that's still there has been already promoted to at least sergeant or above.
Wow.
Me and one of the other guys in my class are both technicians. They happen to be assigned to Rescue Squad 3. So, like, everybody kind of embodied that discipline and pushing forward, and just a different mindset than you encounter every day. And it's pretty great. But just having the ability to do that, and like even the discipline now for me, I heard your podcast with the Way of the Nozzle. I listened to it this morning.
Oh yeah, Raymond. He's
passed it.
Yes.
And just talking about, you were talking about like I'm getting back into a routine of working out.
Yes.
For 6 months now, working out consistently and weighing my food with a digital scale and getting things dialed in, like 45 pounds down, feeling the best I've probably felt in 15 years. But it's not easy to do that in a firehouse because you're supposed to eat firehouse meals together. Well, those guys, it wasn't an easy transition. Now I'm able to sit at the table, eat my portion, and every once in a while I'll still have, like, we do Pizza Fridays where they cook them in a wood-fired oven.
Sure.
I'm going to sacrifice and have a salad and have some pizza instead of eating my ground turkey with vegetables or whatever. But my go-to plan for discipline is to do that, and I'm feeling better. It's producing better results. Like, when we get to a fire ground now, I got to get dressed and catch up to those guys because I've driven there. So, that little bit of extra. Like, I've always been a guy who's a little bit bigger but could keep up. Now, it just makes it that much better to have more performance, be in better shape.
I totally get it, but here's my question to you then, right? Is why? Like, why? How did you come to realize that you need to double down and put the attention into the details like you do today? Were you always like this? Like early on in your volunteer days, before you were even a fireman, in a career side, like, where does this, is it just within you, or is it something you found and something you build upon?
I think that, so one of the things that I do on the side, and I haven't had a chance to do it very much lately, is I like to carve decoys out of wood. My grandfather,
that's cool.
Deep-seated history in my family.
I love that.
Of carving wooden decoys that were hunting decoys. And so that was a fun hobby. I don't get to do it nearly as much as I'd like, but that's a chance to just be creative and look at the details and try to just basically, like, I'm going to try to make the next one better than this one and push forward. When you look at it from the fire service perspective, I did 7 years total assigned to engine companies. I started off at Engine 26 in Brentwood in Northeast, and the firehouse was a great area, but I just wasn't getting what I wanted from the culture side of things there, and I knew that I wanted to eventually make it to the rescue. It's no secret to those guys, but I transferred to Engine 15 as soon as my probation was done, and they took things to a different level as far as the expectation of having, whether you want to call it a play or a plan, like based on the building that you were running, we knew that this building would take the 250. The next building would require the 400. If it's these, like I talked about in my presentation, but there's a building called Marbury Plaza. If you go down the middle hallway, there's a standpipe connection past apartment number 12 of whatever floor you're on, about 3 feet off the floor, recessed in the wall. If you don't know that, you're off the box.
You're not. Yep.
You're out of the game. The other companies are going to get the fire. For us in the technical rescue side of things, I did the testing process and learned right then and there in the middle of my test based on making silly mistakes. One of them, a yellow hose and a black hose are supposed to be connected together and opposite of each other, and I made a mistake, hooked them up to the wrong way. a lot of guys are like, oh, I don't know how you would do that. Like, it's easy sometimes to not pay attention to the details. So it kind of forced me to recognize that details matter and the why matters as well. So even when it came to the technician's exam, I still have nightmares about it. The guys laugh at me all the time about it. But I feel like it's important to own your mistake.
Yeah.
And then the other part of that is how you choose to view that mistake. You could look at a mistake and say, well, I just screwed that up, so I can't never do that again. Or, what did I learn from this? How can I turn to a positive? And then on top of that, I'm going to share it with you so that you don't make the same mistake. So I have a new 90-day candidate who just started. Like, you're going to hear some stuff, and when I say it, these guys are going to laugh because they know where it came from. But if it prevents you from making that mistake
Yes.
or saving someone's life, I'm cool with it. So the test, one of the scenarios, they set up the Arizona Vortex rope system in the stairwell, and they create 3 different issues with it where things are not set up properly. And I picked out the first 2 pretty quickly. I even touched the pulley that was hanging on this thing, and I didn't check it the way that I do now, but it was a significant lesson learned. I missed that this pulley has a double locking mechanism on it, so you hear it click twice.
Right.
And the view that I had of this thing, I couldn't see it, and I didn't touch it, and I didn't change my perspective enough to see that that was the issue, and I missed it, and I failed that station. I was able to have enough points through other stuff to be able to pass the exam, but a huge lesson learned in, like, if you're trying to solve a problem, or you're trying to understand something, or something's not making sense, change your perspective, change your view on it, take a step back. I've heard a lot of guys say, like, I'm looking at this and something's not feeling right. Take a step back, or in my case, take a step to see this from a different view. And so, from my perspective as the technician, I look at it and I'm like, what can these guys bring to the table? A lot of times it is offering, like, letting those guys have a voice in things or whatever, but just recognizing that you need to look at details in a different light, right?
There's so much to that, man. Perspective and believe in your intuition, right? And I think that's, if something feels wonky, take a minute, take a second, right? I think that's so important, and I think that comes a lot with experience, though, too.
Absolutely.
And I think what's interesting, though, you're talking about the details and the discipline. I mean, tremendous discipline that goes into learning the craft and learning your position, right? And the company makes you better.
Absolutely.
Like, you walk into your firehouse, and I can only imagine I know how I feel when I walk into my firehouse or other firehouses, and so I can imagine for yourself when you walk in. I mean, I know you guys get there tremendously early for your shifts. That's just what you do, right? You talked about that a little bit. But what I think is really interesting, though, it's because the culture there requires that from you, but it's not a burden upon you. It's, you want to do that.
Yeah.
And you want to build upon the foundation that was laid before you.
Yeah.
That is what can help fuel your want to be better, right?
Absolutely. And, we talked about some of the original reasons. I don't know the real original reason. I would assume it was because of just, like, getting in traffic wise,
Sure.
to beat city traffic during the week and stuff like that. And then they put an emphasis on, like, for the engine company, the first guy in gets to ride the line, gets the nozzle for the day. So there's an incentive to come in early. Well, the other side of that coin is, if I'm competitive and I'm a type A and you're a type A, I get here at 4:30. Next thing you know, you're here at 4:15. These guys are showing up at 3:00 in the morning. Like, where do we draw the line and what's reasonable, right? But it creates a level of brotherhood and camaraderie just in and of itself, and that, like, getting into work early. And like I was telling you guys, the majority of the time across probably all 4 shifts in our firehouse, the crews are there between 4:30 and 5:00. The rig is checked. The station cleanup is done. Breakfast is being ate around or before 7:00. Like, typically these guys are ready to hit the street and just go to work. And the engine company takes a beating in and out, day in, day out. And we try to support them however we can, work together well, and just trying to push each other to get better.
You got an engine company in your house, so you're stationed with an engine.
Yep. So Engine 15 has a staffing of 4. We have a staffing of 5 on the rescue. The 3rd Battalion Chief and the Chief's aide, EMS supervisor, and then 2 on the ambulance.
Yeah, and I know through conversation. I mean, how many times do these guys turn on the wheel in a 24?
The engine company can do anywhere from 20 to 30 runs a day. They're definitely top 5 in the city.
Yep.
All the time, and just taking the beating the other night, 6 or 7 after midnight. It's nothing. Those guys have come to expect it, and they take it on the chin like a bunch of champions, man. Great dudes.
Yeah, and that's where this system works.
Absolutely.
Right? It's like, the guys that are there are the ones that want to be there. It is, and they fuel what they've been taught, right?
For sure. I mean, we talk about that a little bit, but the guys that go to the 5th Battalion, and there's no knock on those guys because there are some excellent firemen that they go. It was a place before where guys went to finish their careers out.
Sure, 100%.
And now the 5th Battalion has a bunch of guys that are some firefighting guys that are just kind of ready to not take the beating anymore, right? But you can still hear people in that area or even other battalions that would be like, why would I be assigned to that firehouse and run 30 runs a day when I could be here and run 10 runs a day and get paid
Makes
the
sense.
same? So, you have your choice, right? But, these guys want to go to fires. They're paying their dues with medical calls. They're paying their dues hitting the streets, and they're in the communities. They're actively saving lives, making a difference. Like,
All day long. I
the
mean,
experience that you get from that's invaluable, in my opinion. So
yeah, I would agree with you 100%. I think that what's interesting to me as an outsider looking in is, and after meeting you and hearing some stories and then talking with some other guys that I know from that area, there is a very good firemanship culture in that part of the country.
absolutely.
And I think it's supported by the departments that surround DC as well. And I know, before your career days, you're a volunteer. I think you still volunteer.
Yeah.
And so talk to me a little bit about like your early foundations from that. Like how did that play a role in like where you are today?
Yeah, so right out of high school, a guy that I was really good friends with in high school comes to me. He's like, hey, man, there's a volunteer program for being a fireman. They'll take care of getting you. Maryland has this facility, Maryland Fire Rescue Institute, where you can go get all of your training for free. The fire department will send you there. And, the problem with it is it takes some time because they don't just freely schedule it like it, comes through certain times of the year. So it may take you a year or 2 to get everything that you need, depending on when you join the service. But most of the like tech college, the tech school that's down the street from the high school there, they offer it now to their seniors to go get firefighter 1, EMT, and hazmat before they ever come out of high school, so they could hit the ground running if they wanted to. But this guy, he's like, hey man, you should come try it. And I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. There for a little bit, I thought I wanted to be a trauma surgeon for some reason. I don't know why. I took a AP bio class my senior year of high school and did not do well, and thought, well, maybe this isn't going to work for me.
Maybe not. I'll be a fireman.
The firefighting wasn't even really on the radar, right? Like, I had a conversation with my dad afterwards. I'm like, hey, I think I'm going to join the volunteer firehouse. He's like, you can go wash trucks on Saturdays if you want. Like, that's cool. Pretty cool to see that turn full circle and be like, be able to say like, hey man, this started as something that was going to be some fun and a way to serve my community and give back. And then it turned into a career where you're able to affect some change. And then ultimately, a step further than that, to be able to recognize your dream, chase it, and not only be able to work in the department that you want to work for, but to chase the dream job that you want, per se, the position you want, and actually achieve it. Like, your dreams are achievable if you try and work hard enough. Like, if I can tell anybody anything, it doesn't matter where you come from, how big or small the department is. It doesn't matter whether everybody likes you or not. There's a bunch of dudes in that firehouse that don't like me. I'm okay with that. I'll sleep just fine tonight knowing that some guys don't like me. We've talked about this too. Like, you probably have some haters. I got some haters. It's okay.
Got a few. Yeah.
And that's all right. But because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how hard you try, you're not going to please everybody. Not everybody's going to like your way, right?
If everybody likes what you're doing it wrong.
Absolutely. So I just decided I was going to unapologetically be me and do what I do and go for things that I believe in and stand behind. And that all goes back to the we will not compromise. My guys know that I have an expectation for them to perform at a certain level, and I expect them to hold me to the same level of accountability, and they do. So if I'm not meeting the bar because I had a bad night or I worked overtime and I'm tired the night before, that's cool. The excuse doesn't fly. Let's go.
That's right.
We have a job to do, right?
Yes, sir.
And the checks and balances that come with that, it's pretty cool to watch that, because not only does that push each other, but it also builds a level of trust amongst your crew that you otherwise wouldn't have. And I told this story. I showed the videos. We were all laughing about it. I wanted to get a video of me masking up next to the rescue, just to put into the slideshow, because I was talking about masking up with gloves on. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
right.
I'm a fan. I believe in it. Some guys don't, and that's okay if you don't. Just personally, I think it's important for several reasons. The first one is, like, you've seen guys that get hurt, whether it's glass breaking or something like that, and then next thing you know, they're not able to perform their job. For us at engine companies, I can't tell you how many times that you would see two engines running lines down the street. It doesn't happen the way that it used to as much, because they've kind of changed our policy a little bit. But these guys would get at the front door, and one guy would mask up faster than the other one, and inevitably the guy seemed to always have gloves on. So it was like, I got you. Like, even if it wasn't on fire, I had you. Right?
Yep,
So
yep.
there's a little bit of a competitive bragging thing about just being able to get in quicker. But we referenced Cherry Road, where it was a double line of duty death, and that was a big driving force because of the way they found these guys with one of the firefighters that had passed in that,
Right.
without his mask on, and we're like,
Yes.
It just made me feel like, I don't know what preempted him having his mask off or gloves off or whatever, but if you're proficient enough with your gloves on that you can perform small tasks with dexterity, then if something goes sideways, you're less likely to have your first thought be, I need to take my gloves off so I can perform this task.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
I try to do that as much as I can to build the muscle memory and build a level of comfort and confidence, so that you're just ready to go with that. But to get back to that video, the culture and the competition and pushing each other, it kind of happened on its own. I stepped off to the side to video masking up, and I wasn't looking to, like, set a new record or be like the fastest guy to ever put a mask on with gloves on, right? I just wanted to show that it's possible to put your mask on with gloves on and it be smooth and under 20 seconds. And I had done it a couple times, and next thing you know, my lieutenant comes around and was like, Bud, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just trying to get a video masking up.
Right.
Hey, Kelly, you think you can mask up faster than me?
Here we go.
There's 3 or 4 guys competing over it, and we're all laughing. And if you were in a different firehouse, those guys would have, somebody could have just walked by and be like, I'm not doing that. That's silly.
That's right.
But those guys pushed each other. They got a rep, or 2 or 3 reps, because they were trying to dial it in, right? So you've pushed each other to get a little bit better, and we made it fun. Like, that's the thing that is hard that a lot of places, the people that have other jobs, they don't understand. Not only do we get to affect changing people's lives every day, but we get to have fun doing it.
I've really come to realize over the last few years how important it is to surround yourself with people that make you better. And, I always thought I had to be the biggest mouth in the room, the smartest guy in the room, and now I enjoy being the dumbest guy in the room. And that example right there is exactly what just reinforces where I am today in life, is that I want to be challenged more than ever.
Yeah.
And the only way you're going to be and be held accountable is when you surround yourself with people that are going to push you to be better.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. I mean, there's so much complacency in the fire service today. There's complacency in life. And listen, man, there's plenty of shit in my own world that I need to do better at. There's no doubt. But, man, when you get people around you that are excited, it's infectious.
For sure. And like, we all have those ups and downs, right? I definitely have definitely have my fair share of moments where I'm not hitting the mark or I'm not in the right mindset. But when you've created an environment where the guys are comfortable with meeting that expectation and holding you to the same level of accountability, I heard Andy Starnes talk about, like, I have a group of guys that, like, I'm not blasting my dirty laundry on Facebook for the world to solve. I'm talking to a group of guys that I respect, that I know are going to hold me accountable in a specific way. When you create that it takes you to another level, whether you intend to or not.
Yeah.
Because you're forced into a different level of expectation.
It takes me back to the conversation we had earlier, though, about compromise. Like when you have this way about you that I'm just impressed with, right? There's a level of consistency. And, of course, everybody's got an off day. I get that. I'm not saying, but the overall intent is understanding how important the details are and then how you double down on that to make sure that you're not falling into complacency, which so many of us can.
I think it's important to look at. It goes back to taking a step back and looking at things from a different angle, right? A part of our 90-day test is basically rote memorization. Like the information books, 90-some pages, 100 pages, whatever it is now, and it goes down to like the very finest of details about the length of tools, the width of tools, the weight of tools, their operating pressures, safety factors on ropes, safety, what the ratings are for pulleys and stuff like that. Some of this is like, okay, you're proving that you're putting effort in by memorizing that information. Some of the other stuff can literally save someone's life or kill them. So having the ability to look at the information and understand what's important versus what's some information that you're reciting for the process and to prove that you've given the effort that's required, right? There's a difference there. The same thing on the fire ground. Like, understand certain things. Does a hose have to be racked perfectly? No. I'm a firm believer that packs pretty, pulls pretty. Like we showed the pictures of the back of engine 15. It's pristine. Those guys run 6,300 runs a year. They take the extra 2 minutes that it takes to do it the right way. That's clean and look good because the detail matters, right? The perception of. And I used to feel this way pretty hardcore. I'm not going to say that my feelings changed much, but like I feel like you could walk into a firehouse and without meeting a single member of their crew, you could look at the way that their firehouse is kept, their rig,
yes,
and how things are done, and you can form a preconceived notion of what you think they are. It's not fair to say because there are companies in the district and companies all across the country that don't have all their folds packed perfectly, and they would run right over top of you. I have no doubt about it. So that's not a telltale. That's not a tell-all sign. So
what I love about that though, and I think there's a lot to that. The apparatus, if these guys are proficient and they're pulling their lines and they're pulling them well, yeah, they could run over a lot of people. Doesn't matter how tight that is in a way. What I judge on, like you said though, Eric, is when you walk into a firehouse. I just got back from an unbelievable trip, Memphis, Little Rock, and St. Louis.
Yep.
And I went in some of the busiest firehouses in those cities and met a lot of different people along the way. Spent a couple days. It was, unbelievable. I'm the luckiest guy in the fire service. I say it all the time, right? I get a backstage pass to all these places. And the one thing that I take away from it is you do know as soon as you walk in that firehouse and before you speak to anyone, you know what kind of company they are. And they could be in the most ghetto, rundown, falling apart firehouse, but everything that's in the firefighters' control within that building is squared away.
Yeah,
you know the type of company they are. And I went into some ghetto firehouses, and every single thing that those guys could control, and we actually talked about it. Taylor and I talked about it on the trip.
Okay.
And I said everything that those guys could control was done, I's dotted, T's crossed.
Right.
That to me is a level of care and an importance, a focus on detail that matters, which speaks to the type of company and culture they are.
So you mentioned that, and we talk about control versus variables. The fire service in general is dealt a hand of variables that we have no control over
all day long.
Right? We're behind the eight ball. Some organizations are reactive instead of proactive. That's a totally different conversation. But in a job where the variables could very well cause you to not come back home again, we have an obligation to the citizens, to the guys that we ride with, and to our families and to their families to push it to the next level by controlling the variables that we can. I put my gear on the rig the same exact way every time. After the fire's done, I put it back the same way because that's the way that I've decided that works best for me to get dressed. I mask up the same exact way every single time so that there is a muscle memory. We talked about the stages of learning, and unconscious competence. I don't have to think about that skill at all because I've done it so much. The muscle memory is just there. I can just do it, right? Knowing the buildings, knowing the hose lines for the engine company, knowing what length of ladder is going to reach what window for the truck company guys. I'm not going to pretend to know it because I don't like. There are guys that can tell you this ladder will follow this. You know, you need to set back this and do that.
Sure.
That's cool. I strive to know that. That's a thing that I need to improve on. But you know, making sure that the rig is operationally ready in the morning. All these variables that we can control, knowledge of the building, everything else. That in essence, like we reference this Swiss cheese theory, like that reduces the chances of something going sideways because we've taken a bunch of stuff off the table that's not going to be a problem now. We've stretched this line so many times that we know how to do it right. Or for our guys, we're digging in on how to search properly and remove a victim properly. Cool. Well, if it happens, now you have a way to be able to use it.
I love the unconscious competence.
I think
it takes work.
I think
it takes
it's huge.
Consistency. Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, I think that's a great way to sum up like what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
But I challenge people because I know I struggle with consistency at times.
Yeah.
Not just in the firehouse, but in life, right? It's one of those things. I think it's what you do with that, right? You mentioned it before, and the word humility popped up to me about like what do you do with your mistakes? You talked about the pulley on your haul system that
Yep.
you know that you didn't double check or get a new perspective on, and you missed it.
Yep.
It's what do you do with that?
Yeah.
You know, and that's interesting to me because I think internally you have to have a way about you that wants to double down so that you don't make that mistake again. I think inherently it comes from you, but I do believe your surrounding culture can push you.
Absolutely. There's a picture on the slide that I talked about failing forward, and it was a picture of a 15 engine, first due on a fire, and we pull into the block. This is my first working fire that I've driven the rescue to. I wasn't even the technician. I was filling in for the day. And I pull up, take a quick look, think I'm pulling into the right spot. I'm like, man, I'm good. I got the guys close. They don't have to run a block down the street to get into the building. We're good. I'm getting dressed, and as I'm about to buckle my pants, my running pants, I hear footsteps, and I hear, they did it again. And I realized then just how big of a mistake I had made by pulling into a spot that I thought I was out of the way, but I was blocking out the second due truck, right? You have a choice. You have a choice. Can I run back to the firehouse and say, man, I screwed up so bad. I don't ever want to feel like that again. I'm just not going to drive. I'm just going to accept that I failed and be mediocre and not do this again. Or, all right, time to get back in the books, time to understand things a little bit better, time to slow down for an extra 3 or 4 seconds and take a different perspective from the driver's seat and think, all right, well, who's going to be going where? Who's, second due truck's going to be coming in here, or listening to the layouts on the radio when the guys are calling them out and, okay, I got to avoid that intersection because of this, right? Whether you decide to roll over and accept that as who you are or take that information and push yourself to be better, that's your choice. And I choose to take my failures and make them a positive experience that I'm going to learn from. And honestly, like some of my biggest learning experiences, specifically since I got into the rescue, have been from failures. So you just got to have that mindset with it, though.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, right? Because I was just going to challenge you on that a little bit, right? Whether you want to, it takes ownership.
Absolutely.
And what I'm finding, though, is people are removing themselves more than ever from owning their mistakes.
For sure.
Meaning, you'd go back and you could do 2 things. One, you could be like, I screwed up, I'm embarrassed, that's terrible, and do nothing about it.
Yep.
Or you go back and you go, I got to dive back in the books, or I got to do better, I got to go walk the street, I got to walk these buildings better, whatever it is, right?
Yep.
That's taking ownership. What about the guy in the middle of the road that takes no freaking ownership? The guy that says, I screwed up, oh well, get it next time, and walks away. Doesn't put the time in, even to focus on to admit that he was wrong. Like, we have people today that make errors every single day in a fire ground and will not accept responsibility for their inaction.
Yep. And we've seen our fair share of that as well. Not necessarily from our guys, but we've seen it time and time again. That's a tough one because people in the firehouse that aren't on that same level or don't have that same mentality, they know that the guys there, by and large, are committed so much to the reputation and the expectation level that essentially, if you're not meeting it, like
you're out.
We're gonna suggest that you try to find somewhere that suits you better. But but in the meantime, those guys are gonna carry the weight, right? They're gonna pick up the slack to make sure that 15 engine gets the line on the fire first, or that we do the job that we're supposed to do appropriately, effectively, and efficiently, and that we uphold the efforts and the reputation that the guys before us set the standard on.
I love so much of that, right? And the thing is, too, I think ultimately the people that don't take ownership of their actions or inactions, they don't last in the places, because places, companies, ace houses don't allow for that.
For sure.
They don't allow for it.
For sure.
There's no room for it.
Yep.
Yeah. That's cool.
Some of that
Talk to me. Yeah, go ahead.
Some of that just comes from creating an environment where you can allow the guys to have more input too. Like we do, we talked about a little bit, air brake drills versus 2-minute drills. The air brake drill, I'm just going to pull up, hit the air brake. We're going to go to work as a company, simulate just like it's a regular run, whether it's a cut job or a car on its side or whatever. And then when we're done, we're going to hot wash it, reevaluate things, and talk about it. Versus the 2-minute drill is one of my favorite things to do. Everybody gets 2 minutes from the time we pull the air brake to take a look at what we're getting ready to encounter. All of you need to come up with a different plan. And when the 2 minutes is up, we're going to execute all the plans. No two plans can be the same. So everybody has to come up with a couple different options. And then it helps you with building tools in your toolbox, adding to your Rolodex of options. And it also helps you be like, well, I've been wondering about how this will work. And this says that this is no good. So now it's at the end of the list, right? But that's cool for us as a company to be able to build that. And even more specifically, like from my perspective, I love to listen to what the guys have to say and what their thought process is, because now I know that guy is thinking a lot like how I would think. So I know I can send him to go do this specific test, and I know that he's probably going to do something close to that, right? But if you give the guys an environment where they can participate in that, and they know they're not going to get scolded for having, quote unquote, the dumb idea or something like that, and we're just going to be like, hey man, let's try it. Let's see what happens. All right, look, this was why it didn't work so well, but I like where you went with that, and let's improve on it. He's going to be quicker to buy in on the next one, right? And then the other thing that happens with that is that guy comes in with a plan that you thought was some junk, and it ends up moving up in your order of your Rolodex of plans because it worked really well, and you just didn't think it, like you didn't put much merit to it, or you didn't try it enough to really give it its due, per se. So I think it's important to create an environment where you give the guys that kind of flexibility to speak up, try, and not be afraid of being bashed or talked down to. When you create a level playing field where everybody has a voice, at the end of the day, the lieutenant drops the hammer when he needs to, and his word is the word, right? But that doesn't happen every day, all day long. A lot of times it's, hey guys, this is what we're going to work on. What do you think? Should we try something different? Cool.
I love that. I love coming away from something like that going like, man, that's good.
I've seen
like I'm the idea guy. So often it's like, how are we going to do this? Whatever. We come up with the way. And a lot of times I have a voice in that.
Yeah.
I love where I can watch others take initiative and tell me like, hey, we're doing it this way. I think this is the way to do it. And I go, yeah, I love
Absolutely.
that. There is nothing better than your own people just knocking it out of the park. And when you're more of a senior guy, you can sit back and go, okay, we've made a difference here. Like this kid's getting it now. It's just fun to watch it come together.
Absolutely. And if you give the backstep members the ability to come up with a drill and tell them, hey, next door, you're running a drill. I need you to tell me what it is so I can facilitate whatever you need.
Yes.
When you put the responsibility in their hands, they're going to prepare because they don't want to look silly in front of their coworkers, and it pushes them to be better. They take some more ownership. They know that they're valued. It's important.
I couldn't agree with you more. I love it. I want to talk. I want to kind of keep going down this road.
Yep.
Something that's really important to me is the dynamic between the officer and the chauffeur.
Yep.
I think there's an incredible relationship there between the two. A lot of it is not even verbal.
Absolutely.
You get in tune with your boss, or the boss gets in tune with the chauffeur, technician, driver, whatever you want to call it. That dynamic is, I think, incredibly important on the fire ground, in decision making,
for sure, in
the informal stuff in the firehouse. All of that. Maybe a little background about how that works for you. I don't need the intricacies, obviously, but just, how is it in like DC? What's that type of environment, and what has it been for you?
So for every firehouse in the district, the chauffeur, not the chauffeurs, the technicians, squad driver, engine driver, wagon driver, the truck drivers, the technicians in the house basically run the day-to-day stuff as far as how things are going to go and that kind of thing. The wagon driver on my shift is senior to me. He's a great dude. He handles the majority of stuff there. If he's not there, then it's my responsibility. But he's a solid dude, takes care of business. For the stuff company wise, we push it down to the lowest level. So the senior backstep guy would be the one where like, hey, the detail is going to be like this, because we have more guys assigned to the rescue than there are spots. So every once in a while, somebody has to be detailed out.
Yes.
So, if they're trying to figure out what the order of their details are going to be, you guys can figure that out through the senior guy. If y'all have an issue that can't be resolved, come let's have a talk, because we can probably figure it out. But if it needs to go to the officer, he's going to rule what the officers rule, right? So we try to prevent that from happening whenever we can. So like, hey, if you got an issue, let's figure it out before it gets to him, right? I'm sure a lot of places operate the same way. We want to keep it away from the officer, right?
Right.
Handle the stuff inside as it is. When it comes to the play or the plan for certain calls, the lieutenant is deferred to me. Like, hey, what do you think? How do you want to run this? Cool. This is what I think plan A should be. Is it always going to work that way? We operate in a world where we don't use the words always and never, right? We never say that we're never going to do this. We never say we always do it that way, because inevitably, as soon as you do, you're going to run the call where you have to break that rule. So, but we get to do that a lot. And then there's just, like you said, some of it you can't even put into words. It's just an unspoken kind of level of trust. He knows we've had so many conversations and talked so much about so many different things and worked together. He knows that I'm going to do a certain thing. He knows where to expect me to be on a certain run, and he's going to do the same thing. We have a car that's on its side. We need to stabilize it. He knows that I'm working from the rescue, from the anchor towards the car while those guys are doing their thing. Like, we just have certain things or expectations that have been established, and they don't need to be spoken.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, too, though, is breaking it down a little bit further also, is that the senior man's not always the technician or the chauffeur.
Absolutely.
A lot of times, in a lot of departments, though, typically the more senior guy is the guy that's going to be up front with the officer, right? He's typically behind the wheel. He gets into that position. Yep. That's kind of common.
Yeah.
It's not, sure, there's senior guys that ride the back step, but what's really interesting, though, is the importance of the stress on the technician position within your department, right? Yeah. Because if it's different than the senior man handles a lot of the stuff, but before it goes to the officer, it goes to the technician, basically, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Which is kind of unique, I think, in a lot of regards to the fire service outside of your area.
Yeah, for sure. And like my senior guy's got 23 years in the fire department. He's a great dude. He's looking at his options for the end of his career, and he still shows up, works hard, gets things done.
Yeah.
And he tells it, it's great to have that guy who's been there for a while who can speak up when he needs to and say, we ain't did it like that and however many years, and we're not about to start today.
I love that.
Right? So
we need that.
That's really cool, because then that takes me out of the hot seat. But then he'll be like, hey, if those guys are acting a certain way or whatever, we'll get it straight. Like, it's
how do you deal with things like that? So what's really interesting to me is, like, we talk about opportunity in the fire service. There's more opportunities than ever before, and so people are learning at a pace that we've never learned before in the fire service, right? So there's all, between innovation and technology combined with the old school way of doing it, we're finding new ways to go about, especially with all the disciplines that you guys go to and have to perform.
Yeah.
There's got to be a slew of new information coming at you from every angle.
Absolutely.
How do you protect the integrity of the company while embracing potential change that could be better for your job? You know what I'm saying?
It takes effort every day, on duty, off duty. You know, learning something new every day, paying attention to different things. Like, God bless Andy Starnes. I learned so much from that guy in a 4-hour lecture about things that I've never been presented to about a thermal imaging camera. So it was really cool. We sat around the table and pulled up his PowerPoint and went through that stuff, and everybody walked away from there a little bit more confident in their operation, right? We just did a trench update where we learn some new stuff and put it out to all the members of the division. We're constantly drilling on something because all these skills are perishable, even as it is, right? So you have to be able to be super proficient in certain things. I mean, we don't do a lot of stuff with ropes on runs, but we do it all the time because tying knots, doing the trench stuff, doing the collapse stuff, shoring stuff, dropping a set of panels for a trench, like all that stuff, if you don't have the process squared away when it's time to do it, the odds are low that we're going to do it, but when we do it, we need to be squared away. Same thing with the rip bag. Like, we dig into the details of the rip bag, and it's a probation level skill, right? These guys go to the Saving Our Own program the last 2 weeks before they graduate the recruit academy to get sent out as probationers, and they're taught all of the different air delivery options and assessment stuff and firefighter removal using a highlighter kit, using below grade kits, all these different options that we have. That's cool, but they probably aren't going to touch it as much once they get out in the company, especially if they're assigned to an engine, because the engines don't have it. They don't have it on their rig. They only carry it on the rescues and the ladder trucks. So, you know, with our job at the rescue being primarily for civilian and firefighter rescue, I'm like, I hope we never have to use this thing, but we've got to be rock stars the day that we need it, man.
Yeah.
We have to know it so well. So we pull it out probably every other week and digging into like the in-depth parts of recognizing SCBA failures. What's the solution for the failure? What dictates what delivery method we're going to use? You know, is it based on how the firefighter presents? Are they trapped in their SCBA? We can't pull them out because their SCBA is trapped in heavy debris? Is it because of they're trapped under something? Is it because their regulator failed and now we have to give them a different option? Is it because their primary reducing circuit is failed in the open position and now we have to ditch their pack altogether and quit and take the EBSS on the rip bag and connect it to the male side of the quick disconnect on their SBA so that they have air on their regulator and then ditch their pack altogether? Like, I would hate to have to be the one to have to do that, but we have to be rock stars with that. So there's just a level of expectation that's set forth, and these guys know, like, hey man, I feel like it's been a minute, let's go touch this again and make sure that we're good. Or, you know, sometimes we'll ask the guys, what do you feel like doing? Sometimes, hey, here's like the other day, I grabbed the roof rip bag. We have roof rip bags now for roof rip rescue, the ARS bag. I grabbed the bag and I walked over and they're all just standing there on their phones chatting. I'm like, all right, air brake drill. Here's your anchor. The victim's over there. This is the edge. Drop the bag. Go. No prep, nothing. And it's just cool to watch how things change, because when they get done with the drill, well, I could have done that better. It's been a minute since I've done it. It's time to push myself. And then the next 2 hours turns into, let's dig into the details of, I put the rope in my hand, then I put the clutch, then I put the carabiner on top of my hand, then I wrap it 4 times away from me. Like, you've developed in your mind a process right here, right now. You're building muscle memory. You're getting the rep, and you're one step closer to being dialed in on the money when you need it.
Yeah, I love so much of that. I think, though, and I want to push this a little bit, right? The culture, and I've been talking about that. Your company makes you better. Obviously, that's the background from where you come. And every day you walk through the threshold there, you have this sense of pride and ownership within your own company, and that everything you do that tour represents everyone that came before you and the guys that you ride with, right? There's a lot of companies that don't have that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that are starving for that. And, you know, we always say, like, hey, you gotta, keep pushing forward. Don't sacrifice your own values and morals and ethics and push yourself to be better. It's always easy to say. It's hard to do.
Absolutely.
And there are going to be a lot of people that listen to this episode today, and I would suggest that anybody that doesn't know you, find out who you are and find your course, because I think your course offered a lot of great insight into all of these topics we're talking about today.
I appreciate that.
But I think that we got to find a way that we can create excitement around the individual and don't let the individual suffer because their environment doesn't let them be more than they want to be.
Yeah, and to that I would say, we talk about trying to change the environment that you're in. It's not easy. It's not going to. It's not going to happen overnight. You're going to be looked at as. I heard some guys in that conference be like, everybody doesn't like me because I'm always coming back from a conference with new ideas, and we're stuck with this, the big fight, right? The change versus the way things are. The two things.
100%.
Right. It takes time. It takes effort. It takes consistency. You have to be consistent in the message that you're sending. I will not bend off of what my expectations are. You don't have to like it. We can go through 10 more guys before we get the right one if that's what it takes. It's going to be okay. But in time, like if you're able to, I don't know, let's say it's implementing a new tool or a changed way of doing things, right?
Right.
You're going to be met with resistance. If I could come in and show you a reason for why it works, at least I have your attention. And then I just keep pushing the envelope and keep trying and practicing a different way and showing you a different way. Through consistency and through effort, I think that even if you get one, right? Like at the end of the day, the reason we all go and travel around to do lectures and stuff like, and even this, right? Even the podcast. If you can affect someone's career, you don't know what kind of dividend pays on the back end of that. So,
that's right.
We could talk about a different way of doing things that, like I was just talking about stuff with the rip bag. If somebody's never done that before and they go and try it, and next thing you know, they end up using it on a run, and they save somebody's life. You never know the dividend you're paying on the back end. So put the effort in.
That's it. That's it. Put the effort in. I can't stress that enough. And listen, I was one of those guys years ago where I got very complacent with where I was. I thought I had the answers and so on. And that can creep in pretty quickly on somebody, especially when your surroundings don't push you to want to be better.
Sure.
And the problem is, I think a lot of people are in fire companies or fire departments that don't push the envelope, that don't challenge them. And there's a lot of great people out there that could be even better. They just have to know that it's okay to be that way.
Sure. And, like a great example, I'll throw myself out there again. Several years ago, I was heavy into the whole weight loss thing. I had tried every diet process that there was.
I get it.
I found keto, and I was like the keto guy on the job, like pushing keto products and telling everybody that this was the only way because it worked, right? But it was a quick fix solution that I'm not knocking the diet or the lifestyle in itself, but it didn't work for me to be sustainable long term, right? So I lost all that weight and I literally put it all right back on, like looked like a bag. It was bad. And
bro, I live it. I get it.
And now I have learned how to fuel the machine per se properly, and to be able to, more importantly, like, sure, it takes effort and discipline to go to the store and get the stuff that I need to prep. And I do it twice a week, 3 times a week. I'll come home and cook ground turkey, whatever, digital scale, weigh it all out. It takes more discipline to only eat what you fixed and stop. But understanding that concept and embracing it, I've learned how to do it the right way and not rely on a quick fix or a product. Now it's about truly fueling the machine. It wasn't always that way. So I could say, like, I did this and yo-yoed back and forth. But figuring out the right way to do it, now I'm good. Now I feel like I'm going to be set for staying on the right path.
Yes to all of that, right? I don't know how else to kind of like.
Yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I think that is something that I've come to realize is you got to double down on yourself.
Absolutely.
And you can't sacrifice your own thoughts for I don't know how others view you.
Yeah.
You gotta go all in on yourself and believe in yourself. I think it's important. Talk to me a little bit as we start to wind down. I just the dynamic of where you are today. It's fun to watch. Let me ask, if you don't mind, how old are you?
40.
Ballpark? 40.
Yep.
40, and you're running with 20-something-year-olds.
Oh, yeah.
And you're right.
Yeah.
Again, it's another place in your life where you've recognized what you got to do to stay in the game.
Well, I mean, yeah, you recognize what you have to do to stay in the game, but also there's a level of a mindset in that and of itself. Like, and I talked about this in Recruit Academy. I started in recruit school when I was 30, and we're chasing.
Oh, that's right.
We're chasing dudes. We're chasing dudes that are 19, 20 years old. I'll be straight with you. I'm not going to run up the stairs as fast as that guy, but you need to know I'm coming. I'm going to get there. I'm going to work as hard as I can until the job's done, right?
Yes.
And that there's value in that. There's value in knowing that. So it's interesting. Like it took me a long time to adapt to the environment of working there, just because you are busy, a lot more than in other places. When you're assigned to the engine company, you can the guys in the training academy will say, if you can't stand being up for 36 hours straight, then you're going to really struggle at this job if you were to get held over or work overtime, because you potentially could be up the entire time. We do 24/72s. A lot of guys work overtime before or after. So you're just hitting the streets, getting it in. But it's just, it takes a level of commitment and dedication that it's hard to talk about it and compare it to small town USA.
Well, we're not trying to, right? Like, listen, the one thing that I've come to really understand over the last few years, and especially over the last couple of days that I've had, traveling the Midwest, if you will, and seeing what's happening in all these smaller cities and the things that I saw firsthand, these are things that I've never seen before firsthand in the world of firefighting. And so it really opened my eyes to a lot of it. And if I'm going to sit here on a podcast and talk about the American Fire Service with people, I better have a better representation of what's happening out there.
For sure.
So what you're talking about, maybe the kid from small town USA can't understand what it's like to run like that, but he certainly can understand complacency, dedication, hard work, commitment, and so on. And that's the message we need to bring across. And so, the fire service looks different in every zip code.
Absolutely.
There's not one way that it's done. There's not one big broad stroke. It's right back to Eric Budd's presentation, that it's consistency, motivation, discipline, successes in the details. Bro, that's what you talk about day in and day out.
Yeah, and I just felt like it doesn't matter where you're at, whatever the name on the front of the building is, the details still are going to make the difference between the wins and the losses, per se, for some of the conversations that we had. Or if you want to go straight into the down and dirty of it, like rescue versus recovery, right?
Right.
The details could make the difference. So it matters.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that needs to be discussed much more, and people need to talk about that. We can do the job, or you can do the job really well.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
You can be good, or you can be great. Which one you want to be. And that's what sets people apart.
Yeah.
Awesome. Eric, my man, thank you. Thanks for spending an hour with me today, man. It was a great conversation. I truly enjoy what I think will be a long friendship out of this.
Absolutely.
And, bro, if I can push you and challenge you, get out there and keep teaching that course. I think that what you shared, I mean, I know in my presentation I went after you, big shoes to fill, and I think I referred back to your class like 4 or 5 times during my presentation, like just like Eric said, that slide said, like, that's important.
I appreciate it.
And I think that your message resonates, and I think you're doing really good things, and you certainly have a story to share. So thanks for doing that today and just giving me a little bit of your story today, man. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me. It's been a blast. And like you said, looking forward to friendship, and definitely going to make sure you get down here for crabs.
Hell yeah. I'm in on that, bro. I might have to get an Old Bay tattoo right on my forearm.
Let's go. I'll pay for it.
Let's go. I might take you up on that one then. Now we're talking.
I got a guy.
Now we're talking. I love it. Eric Budd, thank you, brother. Washington, D.C., the technician on Rescue 3. Brother, I appreciate you very much. Where can people reach out to you? What's the name of your class if people are interested in hearing more about your class or what you're doing? Give the spill your details, bro.
So you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. I do some TikTok stuff. Hunting, fishing, fireman. Everybody laughs at me for that, but those are the things that I love to do. So hunting, fishing, fireman for Instagram and TikTok.
Talk about that real. Hold on.
What's that?
I'm sorry. I totally didn't even. God, I forgot about that. What you've been doing to promote the job and what you do. You are. You're a social media guy. TikTok.
So TikTok videos. It started off just more for fun, but posting some videos, and it's pretty cool to see people messaging, asking questions about the job, and saying that they're applying for it, and it's a fun, creative way to showcase the good parts of the job, the camaraderie in the firehouse, joking around, and then just showing some of the fun parts of what we get to do. But it's different than just putting a flyer out and saying, "Hey, come work for us. Here's come serve your community," or "Hey, you can make this and work this schedule." No, here show something tangible about what you can do and how our department can make things better. And it's been a lot of fun. So I think.
Yeah, it gets great reception. It's also great footage too.
Yeah, yep.
Not gonna lie, you got opportunity to share some good stuff, man.
Yeah, so Instagram, TikTok, those are probably the easiest ways.
And what was it again? What's it?
Hunting, fishing, fireman.
I love it.
And then Teach for Traditions. That's the company that I've been speaking through. So if you're interested in that class, you can reach out to them. They have a lot of information.
So Traditions Training, one of the OG training companies in the fire service, super reputable. Some of the biggest and best names in the fire service with incredible pedigree and experience behind their teachings. I think you fit right in with that cadre, bro, and you belong there. So good. I appreciate you, Eric. Thank you so much for joining me today on the show, man. I appreciate you very much.
Thank you.
Awesome. Stay right here. I'm going to sign off. I'll come right back to you, okay?
Okay.
Good. Hey, guys, thanks for tuning in for another episode of the National Fire Radio Podcast. Like I say at the end of every episode, take this conversation, take it back to the firehouse and talk about it, because when we're talking about the job, we're making the job better. My new friend Eric Budd, tatted up from Maryland, Washington, D.C., Rescue 3. Thank you, brother, for joining me. We'll see you at the next one. Jeremy, National Fire Radio.
National Fire Radio.